Hello and welcome to the booktube channel Jack in the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. Today I'm definitely talking about a wide variety of genres because I am talking about the theme of nautical books. And these 10 recommendations span across all different genres. But the thing they have in common is they all come to the top of my mind when I'm thinking about what kind of book I want to read for the perfect sea setting. And I picked this theme because in the month of May, I am going on a 10-day cruise to the Caribbean. And so specifically, I have like boats on the brain. This list is in no particular order, so I'm gonna start with book number 10, which is Chlorine, a Literary Horror by Jade Song. It's really interesting that Chlorine made my list of nautical book recommendations because when I first read it, I didn't love it all that much. It was so weird, and I'm a very literal reader, and so it could be a little bit difficult for me sometimes to read weird books. But after I finished it, the story really stuck with me, so much so that I actually bought an edition of it because I had just listened to the audio from Libby, but I wanted to own it and I want to reread it because I keep thinking about it. This is about a young woman who is on the swim team, and she loves water and swimming, but it goes a little bit beyond that because she believes that she is turning into a mermaid. She is not meant to be a human, she's meant to be a mermaid. And so she starts transitioning into a mermaid. So this was interesting because it had a lot of commentary on female bodies and the perception and the pressure and so much of that, and not having control of your body and your identity. I love that kind of stuff. And that's why I say it's a literary horror, because it really focuses on human emotions and then there's commentary. And I really like that element. The turning into a mermaid thing is what was super weird. The nautical vibes were great in this because she does go into length. Okay, it's not a long book, so it's not like super detailed, but she does go in depth with her feelings of how much she loves the water, how she feels when she's in the water, how her body reacts to it, how she feels she's transitioning into a mermaid. So that's why it does really have strong nautical vibes. And I recommend this to readers who can go into the read with the expectation that it is a little bit strange. The mermaid thing is a little bit strange. But if you're looking for the deeper commentary that I mentioned, and you're prepared for that weirdness, Chlorine is an awesome recommendation. The 9th nautical recommendation I have for you is Float Plan, a Contemporary Romance by Trish Doller. This one is a last-minute entry onto this list because I just finished it a couple days ago. I listened to the audiobook on Libby and I was blown away. I loved the romance of this book, the chemistry between the characters, but really what connected me to this book were the nautical vibes. This is about a woman who unfortunately lost her fiance when he decided to take his own life. It is 10 months later, and she wants to honor him by taking his sailboat on an epic trip around the world, but really it's around the Caribbean, and that's how she wants to honor him. However, when she sets off, she realizes that she might have bitten off more than she could chew, so she hires some help, and that's where the love story comes in. So what I loved was how the ocean was depicted. It was very adventurous. I loved how like one day they were hungry, so he just went diving for lobsters. And talking about making the food on deck and then eating it, how it tasted was absolutely phenomenal. And they'd go fishing and they'd visit all these different islands in the Caribbean. And okay, I might be artificially excited about this book because they went to a lot of the places I am going to be going to very shortly. But it still had such a sense of adventure, going to these islands, meeting the people, sharing a meal with them, getting to know them, the kindness of these people, of the islands, and then also other travelers that were sailing. The sense of adventure was just stellar. And it's all centered around the ocean and what it's like to travel long term on a small boat, the problems they encountered, the bad weather, the navigation. So cool. I adored this book. I already want to reread it. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to buy a copy of this. Number 8 on my list of nautical recommendations is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, a fantasy by Shannon Chakraborty. This is book 1 in a new fantasy trilogy. Book 2 isn't set to come out until September 2025, as per GoodReads right now. So I have to wait a little bit for the next book. So I can't really recommend the whole trilogy, but I can recommend book 1. This has amazing, amazing pirate vibes, which is something I definitely think of when it comes to nautical recommendations. And also, since I have like this cruise mindset, like pirates, come on, perfect. And not only does it have epic fantasy vibes and pirate vibes, we have a more mature female main character who is a retired pirate, and she has to get the gang back together for one last hurrah to set her and her family up financially forever. That's essentially the plot, right? Getting the band back together. And I love this mature character and how she has an established reputation and career that she really earned. She really earned through all her adventures. We kind of flash back a little bit to some of those adventures, but I like seeing Amina and her crew back on the ocean, now at an older age where like their back hurts, their knees hurt, they can't do what they used to do, but they are still badass and they are still sailing and going on this epic adventure that doesn't turn out to be as it was promised, right? They all thought it was going to be kind of easy, but turns out not so much, and that's where the fun plot comes in. Number 7 on the list is the Live Ship Trader Trilogy, a fantasy series by Robin Hobb. So yes, the number 7 slot is actually 3 books I'm recommending to you, but the Live Ship Traders Trilogy is such a unique sea setting that you have to read all of them. You have to read all of them to get a sense of the story. So first I want to say that this trilogy is part of a larger series, Realm of the Elderlings, and so technically these are books like 4, 5, 6, but you don't have to read the first trilogy. I don't think. I read them in order. I read the first trilogy and then Live Ship Traders, and the crossover in this series from the first went completely over my head. I didn't get it. There's different characters, different plot. I think they're in the same world, but they're not in the same like kingdom, and so I didn't get when there was crossovers, and I still really enjoyed it. So you could start here if you wanted to. I mean, you might anger some purists that love the whole Realm of the Elderlings, but you can get away with it and I won't tell on you. I love that the cast of characters in this trilogy is very female forward. We have a lot of POVs. They're not all female, but largely our main characters are part of this one family that's kind of struggling. They did have this reputation for being a trader family, so they have a ship and they trade in this community, and these are like higher class families, but they've been struggling a little bit. They do have a live ship though, which is very rare, and it's part of this like noble class where the ship is passed down through generations within the family, and after so many captains of the bloodline pass away on the ship absorbs their memories and it becomes alive. So what's so unique about this trilogy is that the ships that are sailing on the ocean are characters. They have personalities. They have feelings and emotions. A lot of them are pretty out of control with their emotions too, particularly these 2 books. But that was such a unique spin, and the magic around the ship was very fascinating. You have sea serpents as well, which play an element into it, and you really get a sense of life on the ocean, on the boat, like the confined setting. There is one captain on here who treats a young cinnamon roll character very horrifically, and that was traumatizing for me in book 1. But I did keep going with the series and ended up really, really enjoying it. Peaks and valleys with this one, but I really respect what Robin Hobb did because it had such unique nautical vibes. Moving on to number 6, The Deep, a fantasy by Rivers Solomon. I would describe The Deep as a mixture between The Giver and The Little Mermaid. I say that because we follow a group of mermaids, and they have a society very similar to that in The Giver, where there's one person who is a historian that holds all the memories of the people the history, the traumatizing events, everything that led them there. And it's very overwhelming for her. She can share the memories temporarily, but then she takes them back and she holds on to that pain for herself. Very overwhelming. She wants to get away from it. So that is the element that reminds me of The Giver. And then the element of The Little Mermaid comes in because there are interactions with people that live on land. And it's not like a part of your world situation where she's like falling in love and wants to be human. That's not what I mean with The Little Mermaid. But I mean just the interactions with humans and the observations about humanity and humankind was very, very fascinating. The fantasy around the mermaids was very intriguing. How it was described to live in the deep, deep ocean was interesting. Like, they talk about the pressure, like the pressure on their skin and like their body to be that deep underwater. They talk about the light, how there's no light down there. And then how the mermaids hear with their skin. Like, it sounds like vibrations almost. Like, I think of echolocation with whales. And just the descriptions of living in the deep, deep sea really made me think. And the imagery that I got was very cool and fascinating, because when I think of the ocean, I don't necessarily think of the deep, deep, dark ocean where there's no light and not a whole lot of creatures because it's so like deep underwater. So very, very fascinating setting. And then the observations on humankind was just very fascinating. In the number 5 spot, I recommend Shipped, a contemporary romance by Angie Hockman. If you have read The Hating Game, which is another contemporary romance book about enemies to lovers, work colleagues situation, I would say you would enjoy this book because it is kind of like The Hating Game meets Legally Blonde, but set on a cruise ship. Because we follow 2 characters who go on this luxury cruise and they are tasked with an assignment. Whoever comes up with the best marketing plan for this cruise, like, wins the account. So very, very competitive because they win the account, they get a promotion, so they're competing, and that's where like the enemies thing comes into play because they don't really like each other. But they have to go on this luxury cruise together. I love the nautical vibes, and also it's a cruise, so you can see why I picked this one. I like their shore excursions and how they bond over those events. And that overall was great, but it doesn't completely take place on the ship. We do follow them back on land when they get back, and I liked the workplace scenario for this. So it does combine the nautical vibes with also some land lovers. I couldn't possibly make a list of nautical book recommendations without the book in the number 4 slot, Tress of the Emerald Sea, a fantasy by Brandon Sanderson. I had to do it. I had to put this one on the list. It has really made its rounds over BookTube, BookTok, Bookstagram. It's very, very popular, and for good reason. This has fantastic nautical vibes, and it's so creative because this takes place on a ship, on an ocean that is not made of water. And I think that is so creative and fun, the different elements that our characters have to work with. Like, they're kind of working against their environment, which I guess you could say for a lot of nautical themes without this mysterious substance. But I loved the sea life on this and how Tress finds her way, because she's not an experienced sailor, and the different characters she finds herself surrounded by, the different things she has to learn, the different things she's confronted with, and how she leads with kindness and caring about people is something I really enjoyed, like a good tone of this book. There was some humor as well, but it's really the creative magic that got me. And the magic is in the setting of this book. Very unique nautical vibes. I have to put it on the list. The number 3 recommendation is Death on the Nile, a mystery by Agatha Christie. I wanted to put this book on the list because I love the cruise setting on the Nile in Egypt. Typically when I think about cruises, I think of like tropical Caribbean vibes, which, don't get me wrong, I love reading about, and I've even talked about that Caribbean setting here. But this just gives a different culture. So when they're sailing the Nile and then when they're going on their excursions, there's just different sights. There's a different feel. You can imagine them wearing different outfits, and I mean the time period is different too, but it just gives a whole different setting to this nautical vibe. You do get that, isolated, trapped feeling of being on a boat, since this is a cruise, essentially. Very, very small one. Limited group of people. And I love an isolated setting in a closed circle mystery, which is what this is. We have a very suspicious death that happens on this trip, so you know that it was someone on board. So we follow Hercule Poirot, the detective, who is my favorite literary character of all time, as he's trying to solve this. And I love that you have like a limited cast of characters to choose from. You have to learn their motives and how they did it. And the whodunit is so fascinating. Such a good twist on this one. So that is why I recommend it for a nautical vibe. The next nautical recommendation I have for you is The Woman in Cabin 10, a thriller by Ruth Ware. In this thriller, we follow a travel journalist who is going on this extreme luxury cruise so that she can write about it to promote it. Everything starts off wonderfully. It's a very small cruise, not like a massive 4,000 person one. It's more like, I picture a yacht, like a very large yacht for this one. Anyways, she's on this cruise, everything's great, but then the weather starts to turn, it's a little bit bumpy and gray and ominous, and she hears a woman go overboard. And I think she sees it. It's like a dark silhouette. She witnesses this. But the next day, everybody's accounted for. So what did she witness? Really, you need to read this if you like unreliable narrators, which is something that I don't necessarily like. So this book, I think I ranked 3 stars for that unreliable narrator that nobody believes, everybody thinks she's crazy, but it does have stellar nautical vibes because, again, you have that isolated setting on the ship and like a whodunit situation. But not only is it a whodunit, it's a whodun what? The final nautical book recommendation I have for you on this list is Lies We Sing to the Sea, a Greek fantasy retelling by Sarah Underwood. I like that this book really takes a different spin on the nautical vibes by bringing in that Greek mythology. This takes place in Ithaca, where I think it's every year they have to sacrifice 12 young women to the god of the sea, Poseidon. And this one young lady is sacrificed, but she's surprised when she lives. And she kind of embarks on this new adventure, and she decides that she's going to break the curse. How she breaks the curse is by sacrificing the prince to Poseidon, and then that will stop the need for the sacrifices of the 12 women every year. This has great nautical vibes because we're talking about Poseidon here. So there's a lot of water elements, the power of the ocean, and she has to figure out how to sacrifice this prince to the ocean. Like, how does she bring him to the ocean to give him to Poseidon? She does have some abilities after her near-death experience that all revolve around water as well. So I liked this different spin on the water. Very different from these other ones that I've been talking about where they're on a boat, or we're talking about like mermaids or something, or being in the water. So a little bit different nautical vibe for this one. I like all the elements this brought together. There's a little bit of a romance that goes on with this as well, because she starts to really like the prince and she doesn't want to sacrifice him, but she wants to break the curse. What is she gonna do? Those are all 10 of the nautical book recommendations I have for you to check out. I am dying to know from you in the comments down below. What book have you read that you think really captures great nautical vibes, and why? What do you look for in a nautical read? Or if you can't think of one off the top of your head, what is one on your TBR that you think might have awesome nautical vibes? I'm dying to know. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this video. Bon voyage!